Alright, I'm going to put some new front struts on this Civic. Come along, I'll show you how I do it. Alright, we're going to make sure the parking brake is on, which it is. And we're going to chock both rear wheels. And looking at our service info on the front of the vehicle, that's where we're going to put our jack. We're going to jack the vehicle up right there. And looking from the front of the vehicle, you can see there's our lift point right there. We're going to jack the vehicle up on this bracket. Alright, and looking at the side of the vehicle, once we get the vehicle jacked up in the air, we're going to put our jack stands right here, right on this bracket. You can see right there. There's one right here, and if you look close, there's one on the other side right there. We're going to put our jack stands under both. We're not going to get under a vehicle with just a jack. We're always going to put jack stands on this thing. Alright, using a 19mm deep socket and an impact, we're going to take the wheel off. Now, if you don't have an impact, you'll want to break these lug nuts loose while the vehicle's on the ground, or have a buddy step on the brake and then you can do it in the air. This one has a hubcap. We're going to put it under the vehicle as a secondary safety device. Alright, there's a good shot of your strut assembly right there. Down to the fork. And I popped the hood open so you can see it. There's the mounting bolts right there. And there's the center one. We're going to leave that one alone. You don't want to undo that one. That's going to release the spring and can end up in a bad day. And as a habit, I always put a dot on whatever bolt is to the front, and that's just a habit of mine because some struts, this plate on top has to go back in the same exact way, and if I just do it all the time, I'll never get it wrong. And really quick, Honda uses two types of front suspensions, a double wishbone and a Mcpherson style. I got a strut here. This is a Mcpherson style strut off of a Civic. You can tell because it has two mounting bolts right there that mount to the knuckle. So that's when you see bolts like this, and then so this whole thing will turn like that. That's a Mcpherson style. And then a double wishbone is going to have a lower control arm and an upper control arm. So there's our key. When we see an upper control arm, we know that this is a double wishbone. And that's why it's called a double wishbone, because it has an upper and a lower control arm, and they look like wishbones. So let's go ahead and get this thing out. Next, I'm going to pull this 12mm bolt out right here so we can loosen up this brake line. That'll give us just a little bit of play. Alright, looking at our strut, you can see there's a fork right here. We're going to have to get this fork off. And looking at the bottom, you can see we have a bolt that goes through it. So here's the nut and here's the threads on the end of the bolt. I'll show you the other side. This is a 17mm. They're both 17s, but here's the nut side, and we'll look at the bolt side. And looking at the other side, there's the head of our bolt. So we're just going to put a 17mm wrench on there and hold it, and then we'll knock the nut loose on the other side. All right, we'll just take our impact, knock this thing loose. These can be on there kind of tight. Alright, now we're going to tap this, see if we can get this bolt to move. We're not going to smash it, just going to tap it. Alright, so you can see it's moving without too much effort. Now I'm just going to take a center punch, just tap it out. And not quite long enough, so I'm going to take a longer punch, knock it all the way out. Now, this one doesn't look too bad. The bolt on the other side was a lot worse and rusted in there, so it took a lot more hammering. So this must have been apart recently or something. but the bolt is fluted, which helps it not stick in there. But sometimes these can fight you and get seized in there, and you gotta really hammer on them to get them out. Now there's the two bolts. You can see the one on the other side was a little rustier, and that's how they can get. But because they're fluted, they tend not to seize in there too bad, but they can get seized in there, especially if you live in a crappy area like the mechanic. If that's the case, you're gonna have to. You probably want to impact it on this side. You want to hammer it like I did on this side. Just don't mushroom out your threads, or you'll be buying a new bolt. I would definitely use a center punch like I did to transfer the energy right down the center, and you won't mushroom the head out. But impacting motion can also kind of break it loose a little bit, and then you can pull it out. Because these will spin in there. It's not like it's fluted because it's splined or anything. It's only fluted to protect against rust. But you might have to work at it to get those out. Now, as you can see on the top of the fork, we got a bolt right here that pinches this tight against the strut. So we gotta pop that out. It's a 14 millimeter head there. So we'll just reach in there and spin it off, just like that. And just like the lower bolt, these things can get rusted in there. Impacting always helps. Tell you what, if there was one tool I was going to splurge on, especially if I did my own work on my cars, I would get you an impact, at least a 3/8 inch impact. If you're working on Hondas, this will do a lot. There are times when you need a 1/2 inch, there are times when you need smaller ones, but this 3/8 inch can do a lot. I like this one from Milwaukee, the Fuel line. Others make electric impacts, but especially electric. Once you go to electric, you don't ever want to use air again. They're expensive the first time, but you know, if you save the money doing something yourself and the tools pay for themselves, then you got them for every job after that. But when you're working on suspension parts, especially old rusty ones, impact wrenches, they just make your job so much easier. Now, we got to get this loose off of there. We should be able to just tap it like that and get it out of the way. Now we can usually spin these. Yeah, there we go. We just maneuver it. Come on. Sometimes they like to cooperate, sometimes they don't. But we can usually just lift it up and set it right there. Just leave it. We don't even have to take it off the car. We just got to get it back up out of our way, just like that. Alright, now we're going to take our two upper nuts off, this one right here and this one right here. And while I'm doing that, well, the first one I can just take off, just like that. We'll put it aside. Now the second one, this strut's going to want to drop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach around here and grab the spring of the strut and hold it. That way I can zip that off. Now I can take the strut out. Here, why don't you come down here. Alright, there you can see I'm holding the strut. I'll see if I can just rest it there for a second. Let me switch hands. We're going to come out the brake hose side. Now, I could probably get away with not, you know, loosening this, but I just like having a little more play right here, and it's only one little fastener. But you see, we can just bring it out right there. And there's our strut assembly, just like that. And if you notice, see the color difference? We got it lighter gray up here, and then it's dark down here. This strut is blown out, all the oil is leaked out, so it's not really doing anything. And if you look closely, you can see the bushing there is all deteriorating and cracked. And so we're just going to replace this whole assembly. Now, if you've watched any of my prior strut videos, you know I have this Brannick 7400, and so normally I would take the strut, put it in here, compress it, take the old strut out, put the new one in, tighten it back up, good to go. This thing is awesome for doing that. But because this is an old vehicle and you saw the entire strut assembly is pretty beat up, we're just going to put an entire new assembly in there. Alright, as you can see, for these front struts, I'm going to go with KYB Strut Pluses. This is SR4040 and SR4041. I don't remember which one's left or right. We'll just take them out. I'll see which one is which. But that's what I'm going with. KYB, for the longest time, they didn't offer these you know, complete assemblies, so it's nice to see that they're doing that for quite a few models. Alright, as you can see, I cleaned up all the bolts on the wire wheel, and then right here on the shafts, not on the threads, but on the shafts of these, I put some fluid film, just a little bit. That'll to help keep the rust at bay in case somebody ever needs to take this apart again. Now these lock nuts, we're going to replace those. So as you can see, I have two brand new lock nuts, one for each side. There's the part number for this vehicle for these. As you can see, assembled in USA. Honda, you know, sometimes on struts, Honda wants you to Honda recommends replacing all these bolts. On this vehicle, they don't say you have to replace all those, but I would if they were, you know, if they were just crusty and falling apart. I would not trust my suspension to them, and I would replace them. But in this case, these are just fine. We're just going to replace the nuts that Honda recommends. All right, it's a good idea. Verify your parts. As you can see, the 4040, that's the side I'm working on. If you notice, they got a little tag here. Vehicle height might be a little bit higher. Let it break in, because you got a brand new spring. That spring's going to want to settle a little bit. And then usually there's a sticker over the top here warning you not to touch this center nut. If you mess around with that or loosen it up, you know, like especially on your old one, that spring's going to expand rapidly, and one of your body parts is probably going to be in the way. So I highly recommend you don't do that. You need a spring compressor if you're going to take these assemblies apart. If you want to see how to do that, you can watch my other strut videos, and you can see how to take a typical Honda strut assembly apart and put it back together. Alright, we're going to take the strut, we're going to fish it right up underneath the brake line right here, and it's going to go, where is it? Right into its home right there. Alright, this strut assembly came with two brand new nuts for the top, so we'll just get them ready to go. Now, we're going to take our strut assembly and we're going to find our little notch there. That needs to go to the back, or toward the inside of the vehicle. And as long as it's toward the inside of our vehicle, our post will be correct. And we'll just fish it up underneath here, behind the brake line, and then up through the upper control arm. And then we reach around and then loosely put these brand new nuts on. There, now it's in place. Alright, because we have it loose up there, we got a little bit of play. Now we're going to take our fork, we're going to bring it this way, past it. We're going to drop it down. We're going to fight with it for a while, because that's what they like to do. And then we'll get it, come on. And we'll get it up into place where it's supposed to. You can see we're pretty close there, and then we just gotta find our notch back there, and we gotta get it into place. Once we do that, we're good. Alright, ran into a little bit of an issue, had to pull it back out. As you can see where our notch is right there, if we go up top, look at how our bolt or our studs are. This one's at the proper angle. You can see this one is over a little bit right here. I don't know if you can see that. I can get a better view. You can see how they're off a little bit. This one, that plate should be like that. So it makes it so the little notch won't line up on the bottom. I'm going to have to bring this over to my spring compressor and move this. Alright, this is the driver's side. We'll look at it real quick. And you can see this one lined up perfectly. So we're good to go on this side. But unfortunately on the passenger side, whoever was putting these assemblies together was kind of lazy and didn't get the geometry correct. We got to fix that. And you can see, even with the completed assembly, I still had to compress it and fix it. And now, if you look where the bases are, or where the end of that spring is, and that, now we're pretty darn close. And I can tell you what, these tiny little coils on these Honda springs, they suck to work with. Even the Brannick doesn't like it. Alright, the strut's back in, the fork is back on. Let's see, can I get you a shot? Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that. I can't see inside the camera, but yeah, right there you can see that it's back in there in perfect position. So we just had to fix KYB's mistake. And that's what you want to make sure. You want to make sure that fork is all the way up against the little bracket that's back there, and that that little tab is down in between the pinch fork there. Once it is, we'll drop our bolt and throw it around, and then after that, we'll go ahead and put it in. We'll just get it started by hand. That's all we need to do right now for that. Alright, now taking our lower fork bolt, we're gonna, from the caliper side, this is the front of the vehicle, that way. We're going to go from the front of the vehicle towards the back. That's how these bolts go. We're probably going to have to push this down to get it to align to the fork, and then we'll get it in. So as you can see, it's not quite aligned there. And so normally, you just push right here on the caliper. You can just push down just a little bit and get it to line up. Usually that's all you need. And then just mess with this, pull it over, push down a little bit, and you can get it right in. Alright, from the other side, using our brand new lock nut, we'll just go ahead and spin that on, and it's going to stop right there, right where it starts to lock on. Alright, now we need to torque them all down to the final spec. In order to do that, we have to load the suspension. So I'm going to take the jack, I'm going to put it right here, right next to the nut. I'm not going to put it on the nut, I'm going to put it right here. So the jack will kind of be like that. And I'm going to jack it up until it just starts to come off the jack stand over there. Right when it comes off the jack stand, I'll stop, and then we'll torque them all down. Alright, as you can see, I can barely move the jack. It's just a hair off. Now we can torque everything down. You can see that's how I have it set up. Alright, we're going to torque that top pinch bolt, but let's make sure that little tab is located where it's supposed to be. And can you see that? Looks good to go. Perfect. Right where it's supposed to be. Now we can torque it down. Alright, now we'll just go and tighten it up. Alright, we'll get it close and then we'll torque it. Alright, this is 32 foot-pounds, so we'll go ahead and get it to 32 foot-pounds. Eh, 32.2, close. Alright, now we'll get the bottom fork bolt, so I'll just hold this side, the bolt side, with the wrench, and then I'm just going to take my little impact and I'm just going to run it in, seeing as it's a lock nut. Not going to be any fun doing it by hand, so we'll just do it this way and get it close, and then we'll do a final torque. See if I can do it with you guys in the way. Alright, that lower bolt is going to be 47. So we'll get that torqued to 47. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll hold the wrench and then torque it. Alright, now we just got to tighten up these two top flange nuts. We'll just get them started a little bit, and we'll go grab the torque wrench. Alright, these are going to be 36 foot-pounds, so we'll bring it down to 36. and go with that. Now I like to go back and forth and get them close instead of taking one all the way. Alright, so now they're both at about 30. What's nice is on this I can see how much I'm torquing them. Now we'll do our final. Alright, now we can get our jack out of there. Alright, now we got to get this brake line attached. Sometimes these bolts don't want to line up easy. Hopefully this one just goes right in. Hey, it did. Alright, we'll just get that snugged up. And just using a ratchet we'll get this tight. We just need it snug. Right there is good. I'm sure there's a torque spec on there, but I'm not worried about it. Missing the cap for the bleeder valve. Definitely got to get that replaced. Before we get the wheel on, let's just double check. We torqued that, and we torqued our pinch bolt, so we're good there. We got our brake line back on and tight. And we got these back on and tight. We're good to go. Now we can get the wheel on. Alright, we'll get our wheel back on. We want to make sure our hubcap is centered over our valve stem. Let's see if we can get this. I like to get that hub centered on there. Now we get to torque it on the ground. And we'll pull our wheel chocks while we're thinking of it. And we'll get these torqued down to 80 foot-pounds. And it's never a bad idea to have your alignment checked after you do struts like this. And especially in this case where we did a whole assembly with new springs and everything. I don't mind driving it a day or two just around town. Let those springs settle down a little bit before you get in alignment. Now I don't mean drive across country or anything, but put a few miles on there, hit a few bumps, let these springs settle before you get the alignment. That's what I like to do. Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed how I do the struts on these older Civics. And as you saw, even using the strut assemblies that are complete, you may still run into issues. And hey, as always, if you enjoyed the video or helped you out, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.